Hello everybody and welcome to the CCMP Switch preparation exam preparation series. What I've done is I've taken the CCMP lab workbook that INE put out, and basically what I've done is I've recorded an entire video series that's already been posted on YouTube for both the CCMP Switch exam and then the Layer 2 technologies, which take a deep dive into CCMP level technologies like spanning tree and core layer 2 that's going to get you ready for, if you're like me, into your CCIE preparation. What I've done is I've taken the entire lab exam that they've taken right here, and it's just a workbook with various tasks that you need to go through. What I've done is I've taken every task that they have in here, and I've created a video walkthrough of how to do each one of them. And for the first, I don't know, half of them, I didn't even have to look at the solutions because it's something I knew off the top of my head. For the back half, I did solution verification to see what I was coming up with versus what they had. CCIEs write this workbook. I have not. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to have a workbook walkthrough so that I could actually walk through and actually configure it, because I have my CCMP Switch exam here within the next week. So I'm pretty close to actually being ready for it. But what this does is it allows you to follow along at home with all the allows you to follow along at home with packet tracer or live equipment or whatever the case may be for whatever it is your learning purposes are. Everything that I've done in this series is pretty much exactly like it is that you would see with anything else that I do. It's all live on the command line. We have a lot of in-depth learning as we go through it. I do a review with every topic that I cover. So when I cover VLANs, I explain what a VLAN is, what an access port is, what an ISL trunk is, so on and so forth. And I explain this as I go through. Any hiccups that I run into, if I have to, I will pause the video, I will go research it, and then I'll bring in whatever I've learned into the video and share that with you, so that you and I are both learning rather than me just passing on information that I've seen. So there's a few times where I get hung up and I'm not exactly sure as to what the problem is, and that has aided me in learning a couple things that I was not aware of. So it's not only is it a walkthrough for me to solidify my understanding of the technologies, it's also a way for you to follow along. If you're maybe having a hard time on something, you get to see somebody do it live on the command line. The only things that I was not able to do live on the command line, on live equipment, everything was done live on the command line. The only thing that was done in GNS3 is the gateway redundancy at the bottom of your screen, the HSRP, VRRP, and GLBP. The reason for this is because the fact of it was a completely new topology, and that would have required a good hour of recabling and re-IP addressing and rerouting in my home lab, which I've already got cabled up for the CCIE. So it was easier for me just to spend 15 minutes setting it up in GNS3 and then running through there. HSRP, for those of you that don't know this, it can be done on both a switch or a router. VRRP and GLBP both need to be done on a router. It is not supported in switching. So therefore, if you are looking for the switch capabilities, they're not there. I don't know if Packet Tracer is capable of doing this particular technology right now. The last time I tried it, it was buggy. It did not work. It didn't fail over, stuff like that. So every technology that I have in here, whatever the requirements of the lab were, I followed them down to a T, and I was able to go in, and whatever I wasn't sure on, I would go to the solutions to see what they said we should do. And for the most part, I was pretty close on 90% of it. There was a few things in there that they did that I didn't, and that enabled me to learn from that. So a lot of what I've done here was to see how the technology works, and realistically, that's the best way to do it. It's really hard not to learn the technologies without having to lab them up and see how they work, do some show commands, break it, see how it actually fixes itself, and go from there. So the topology itself is, as you can see right there, I actually cabled it up identically, minus a few issues that I have with my home lab, where a port, I bought all my equipment off of eBay, so it's inherent that there might be a few ports that aren't working, or whatever the case may be. And throughout the majority of the videos, you can actually hear the hum of my equipment in the background as I'm going through the different lab scenarios and things like that. This is actually going to be good preparation, because not only does it allow you to follow along with what I did, it also enabled me to do a good walkthrough of the entire lab again, after having just recorded what I consider a more of an in-depth theory series with the layer 2 technologies, where I took a really deep dive into spanning tree, so I really understood it, and some other features. So there's a couple things that I need to cover for the CCIE preparation of layer 2, but for the most part, I feel like I'm in pretty good shape for the CCMP switch exam, which I have this on the 6th. So from here on out, this is pretty much where it's going to be with what I do. I do go through every one of these technologies, so I don't cover campus network design, because obviously there's not a lab that I can really do to show you configuration-wise how that would work. What I do, however, is I start off with VLANs, then I get into trunking, so we can get VLANs across between two different devices. I automate VLAN replication with VTP. I control spanning tree with how that works. We get into increasing the speed between our devices with Ether channel. I get inter VLAN routing, so every device can talk to every other device, and I prove that by pinging pretty much every device from every other device. We get into first hop redundancy, which is actually at the end of our series. So this is actually down here below security. And then for the last one, we get we don't do wireless in here, because there's nothing in here to do for wireless. If you are looking for a wireless walkthrough, you're going to have to look somewhere else, because I didn't actually cover anything for wireless. Realistically, if you're going to be looking at doing wireless, there's going to be a more than likely a LAN controller of some sort, like a WLC, a wireless LAN controller, that you're going to be able to get a hold of. And you're going to be either using a lightweight access point, which is going to pull its configuration from the wireless LAN controller, or you're going to be using an autonomous access point, which you're going to be able to either do a command line or a web GUI connection to and configure it. So most of the time, wireless stuff is going to be outside of the scope of the CCMP. You're just required to know enough about it to potentially help get it ready. Maybe you configure an interface on a switch as a trunk port and allow certain VLANs across that trunk port, so that the wireless access point can advertise multiple SSIDs and map an SSID to a VLAN in that regard. So beyond that, we talked about layer 2 security. We went kind of deep on that with layer 2 filtering. We did port security, secure MAC addresses, and we went in and we did private VLANs. I basically just copied the config out of here, because there's no way for me to test it because of the fact of the way private VLANs work. And I explained what a private VLAN is and how that works. And then we got into layer 2 voice over IP, where I configured the device to support quality of service on a multi-layer switch, which is what switch 1, 2, and 3 are, the 3550, 3550, and a 3750. And when we were in spanning tree and talking about multiple spanning tree, we had some issues with switch 4, and I was able to learn on how some of the things of multiple spanning tree work with older devices. But that is pretty much the extent of what we went through. A lot of what we do, what I've done and what you'll see is going to be just taking whatever the config was, or whatever the lab guidelines were, and I pretended like I was actually in the CCIE lab, and I had to configure it and verify it. And that's I've gotten really adamant when I'm going through my studies to verify. If you don't verify, you potentially run into the issue of things breaking down the road. So if I can go in and configure a VLAN and then do a do show VLAN and verify that it's there, and then I go to the next device and I do a show VLAN and it's not showing up, then that's going to prevent me from going into layer 3 routing and then potentially get into security features where I'm trying to filter things. I know then at that point that if I do a show VLAN after I've created the VLAN on switch 1 and I go to switch 2 to see if it replicated down and it didn't, either I have a trunking allowed list issue, a VTP pruning issue, or I have a trunking issue. So it's going to be one of those three more than likely, and or I have a trunking itself issue where maybe one end is ISL, the other one's .1Q, something to that effect. By verifying as I was going, that helped me spot problems early on, and that's mostly what they're going to be looking for. If you get into a company, they're going to be looking to make sure that you can, if you run into a hiccup or an issue, you know how to fix it before somebody else points it out to you. So that's the entire point, is knowing what to look for, how to verify, things like that. So that is the extent of the series. I didn't go into a whole lot of theory as to how you should build a network or anything like that. This is not a design exam. This is a configuration exam, and pretty heavy on the theory. So I'm going to take what I've learned from going through all 20, it's actually 23 videos, or 22 actual implementation videos, and I'm going to take that experience, take it to the exam when I go take it, and into my CCIE prep. So if you have any questions, feel free to give me a shout via email. I can give you my email address really quick. It's really easy to remember. That is my email. Feel free to hit me up anytime you'd like. It comes right to my cell phone, so I can respond almost immediately if you have a question or concern, or I did something different than what you may have seen, or you might not be sure on something. Feel free to hit me up. There's only one way for you to learn, and that's to ask questions. So beyond that, I hope this has been informative for you. I would like to thank you for viewing.